Now let's look at these three plots that we generated, right? And let's say that we plot it not in a single column. So I'm going to copy this, right? And then paste it here. Okay. Now instead of 3 by 1, that is 3 rows and 1 column, suppose if I do 2 by 2, so which means there will be 2 rows and 2 columns. And we'll keep the rest of the settings the same, right? Okay. So now I get an error. Okay. And the reason for that is now we have not a single column, but we have 2 columns, 2 rows and 2 columns. So the axis objects will have to be accessed by giving both a row label, label for row index and a label for column index. So AX0 is not going to be enough. So I have to say, okay, 0, 0, and then 1, 0. So first column, second row, and then 0, comma 1. Okay. So then I get the plots. There are a couple of problems here. Okay. One is the x-axis labels are running into each other. We'll handle that a little later. But we have this extra blank axis object here, because we needed only 3 axes to plot our 3 gold, silver, and bronze. But when you want to plot it in this fashion, then you have this extra blank object. So when we have a situation like this, now we can, instead of defining in this fashion, we can add subplots individually. Okay. So instead of saying I want 2 by 2, right? So I'm going to copy that. So I'm going to only specify the figure, right? Now I have not specified how many subplots I want. Okay. So axis doesn't know how many subplots. It's just one. Since I have not specified how many axis objects we want, we have to take that off. We have only defined a figure here. Okay. And to define a figure, when we can't use subplots, we have to use figure. Okay. Now this is going to define a figure for us. If you use PLT subplots, then you have to capture both the figure and the axis plots, axis objects, in which case we have to specify how many axis objects we want. Since we want to individually add the axis objects, we only define the container, the figure. And then we can say add subplot. So to this figure that we have defined, FIG, add subplot, right? Now when we add subplot, we have to specify the rows and columns for the subplots. Okay, so in this figure, how many rows and how many columns of subplots we want? We want 2 rows and 2 columns, right? The size that we did not specify. Okay, so here this is 2 by 2 is we wanted. When we did it in this fashion, we had all the 4 access objects, but we want only 3, so we want to do it in a different way. So we say, okay, we want to add a subplot, okay, in a figure that contains 2 rows and 2 columns. Okay, and this is going to be the first access object in that grid of 2 rows and 2 columns. Okay, so that will add 1 access object. And then we can say, okay, add 1 more. So it's the same 2 by 2. This is going to be the second access object. And let's add another one. So that's going to be the third object. Okay, so they are all within this grid of 2 rows and 2 columns. Okay, so now we have defined, so we have 2 rows and 2 columns, but we have added only 3 access objects. So you're not going to have that 4th one sitting there empty. You will have only 3. Okay, and these 3 are now named AX1, AX2, AX3. So we are not going to access these as AX within square brackets 0, 0, 0, 1. No, we have named them as AX1, AX2, and AX3. So we will refer to these with those names. So okay, so now we can say AX1. Okay, so like that one. AX1 is going to be a bar chart, okay, and it's going to be for metal, gold medal. And the AX2 object will be silver, and AX3 object will be bronze. Okay, and then we can use the same, these 3 for labels, right? And once again, we have to, now this time in this cell we have AX1, 2, and 3. So these should be like that. Okay, so now we have the 3 plots, and we don't have the 4th one sitting there empty. Okay, and we'll deal with these names running into each other in a little bit. So that what we did here is described here. Add subplots. We have M representing number of rows of plots, N representing number of columns of plots, and then the third digit is the index number of the plot. So I'm going to move that up here.